I've been trying to think of some new ideas for videos, and I was really struggling to come up with something until it hit me. Government websites. If you want to find quality, pervasive examples of abysmal user experience, just look at government websites. And of course, I was fishing recently, and I remember using the Florida Fish and Wildlife mobile app to purchase and maintain my fishing license so that I wouldn't get hoisted overseas for fishing illegally in the Keys. And man, this is one of the most interesting and unique examples of weird user experience I've ever seen in my life. Clearly they're trying to be a little bit fun, where they've got this interesting animated navigation down here with the little ball that kind of bounces between states. That's kind of cool. But man, it's really hard to use, and it's bloated with all these other features that I ultimately don't really need as a user, right? The main thing I'm trying to accomplish here is buy a license and view a license. Everything else is secondary. So we're going to take a crack at redesigning this as our first main government website to redesign. And of course, we've got their style guide here and a reference image. I've taken some blacks, some grays, the green and the blue, and then a couple little hues from the background picture of the ocean. I feel like we can probably do something with those. And instead of using Roboto, which they're using throughout their mobile app, we're going to use Poppins and Jost as a pairing here, because it has that kind of fun vibe that they were clearly going for. And we want to try and maintain a little bit of that in the redesign here. So as always, we've got our user stories. We alluded to them earlier, but in a nutshell, what I really want to do is purchase a hunting, fishing, or boating license. And then I want to quickly view that license to show rangers when necessary, and it has to work offline, because I might be in the middle of the ocean. Secondary to all of that, I want to view feeding times for certain fish so I can know where to go if I want to optimize my chances of catching that day. I want to view weather and tidal information in case, I perhaps get stuck at sea and I have to navigate back in precarious situations. And then I need to have some kind of app-wide alert that I can view that might clue me into what the local authorities are saying if perhaps I need to come ashore for one reason or another. So with all that in mind, I'm going to take a stab at redesigning this. Excited to see what it turns out to be, because clearly there's a lot of room for improvement here. This won't be a light lift. This will be a significant, complete overhaul. So just going to get stuck in and see what happens. Let's get going. Immediately jumping in here and getting started with the navigation, and I want to try and preserve some of that fun feel, so I'm going to try to use the green. You'll see I ultimately change my mind on this, but really taking the time to find very clear semantic icons is important here, and even after you do that, finding an appropriate label helps users find exactly what they're looking for in each tab, as opposed to just kind of hoping they understand the icon. And I've used the Noun project on this channel before, and I'm going to use them again here. If you ever need some really obscure iconography, you'll find it on the Noun project, and you'll also find a link to Daniel's profile on there in the video description as well. But the Noun project you don't necessarily want to use all the time, especially in client work, because the icons generally will look much less consistent than they would if you used a robust framework. But for things like this, where you just need a picture of an icon of a fish, it's really fantastic. Going to speed you through the rest of the navigation here, so you're not sitting through yet another navigation redesign on the channel. Here you're seeing me make a common mistake whenever you're redesigning something, in that you lean too heavily on the existing UI for inspiration. This was how the licenses were laid out in the existing UI, and it doesn't work for a reason, and you'll see me eventually come around to changing this, but this is just something to be aware of. Whenever you're tasked with redesigning something, and if you don't synthesize stories or reverse engineer user stories from the design itself first, you can find yourself just reproducing it, which is kind of a difficult rabbit hole to dig yourself out of. I went back and forth on this a few times because really from the user's perspective, they don't care about most business logos, so you don't generally want to put it on their mobile app if you can get away with it. But here, given that it's kind of a government website and people want to be rest assured that it is an official website, putting the seal for the Florida Fish and Wildlife Organization in the header made a lot of sense. Here I'm realizing that adding that nice saturated color to the header makes a lot more sense because it gives us an easy way to separate the header of the page from the rest of the content. But if we add that green color to the top, we then have to remove it from the navigation below so we're not just bombarding the user with color. I'm sure many of you have experienced this pain before as a designer, where you're just not sure what kind of treatment is right. And here you're seeing me really tease through all the different options of showing some way to filter these licenses to only show a very specific type. Ultimately, I arrive at a list of floating buttons, and I think that makes the most sense in the context of a mobile app. Now, I really struggled with this part of the redesign because, frankly, I don't know very much about fishing and I don't know what feeding times are. So ultimately, I just made a guess and decided to just show the user exactly what appears in the app, but just styled a little bit better and using a little bit of a more modern visual hierarchy. But I could have definitely really added a lot more value to this UI if I'd done a little bit of light discovery to just learn a little bit more and put my head inside the mind of someone who's actually trying to go and fish. It oftentimes takes quite a while to get the filtration experience for a view just polished perfectly, but man, is it worth it. If you really put in those extra couple minutes to just dial it right in, you'll find that the results on the user experience are really significant. It's becoming a bit of a meme at this point, but here we are with the label value pair paradigm, where we're showing the actual information that I want to consume, which is the time period, followed by the label just above it and much smaller, because the user really wants to consume the time information and not necessarily the label. So we make them sized appropriately in the visual hierarchy. Initially, when I was designing this, I thought I'd get cute with a simple text description of the weather that users can use to get a brief understanding, a qualitative understanding of what's going on. But later I realized that if you're on a boat, you're probably a little more concerned with some other factors, like is it going to rain or what direction is the wind blowing? So we ultimately have to change the form of the metadata here, which you'll see shortly. And again, you're currently witnessing me be very confused about headings because I have no idea how they work. And in retrospect, I should have at least looked up something about wind headings before trying to design this, because I spent way too long just tinkering around with the small little parts of the UI here. Well, if anything's clear from this, I now know that I know really nothing about fishing. It just goes to show when you're doing some kind of redesign, there's really no substitute for genuine discovery on the domain and the customers themselves, because I made a lot of assumptions about how fishing works and what sort of information is relevant to fishermen or just people that are trying to sail on the ocean. Even still, I think that the usability lifts here are significant, such that this would be a much more tolerable experience for someone who's just a casual fisher going on, say, a charter boat or something. that just needed to get a license. So we've got all of our licenses here in this UI. I can filter them by the type of license or subscribe to a new license if I want to. When I do get on the boat, I can learn about the particular feeding times for the fish. I think this is the only times you're allowed to fish. I'm actually not really sure. If someone in the comments could correct me here, that'd be fantastic, but I'm not really sure what's going on here. But then, of course, we have contextual recommendations, and then the same for boating, where we just have contextual notifications and then just the general weather and wind information, which seems to be relevant if you're relying on that wind to get to your destination. So, of course, here we have the UI from before. Really interesting take on, a particular user experience. It's a little fun, but ultimately I think not really the most intuitive UI. And then, of course, here we have the new UI with all the bells and whistles and all the nice, shiny, modern fonts in there. So, yeah, let me know what you think, guys, whether or not this is an appropriate solution to the problem of needing to manage my fishing and hunting licenses. And Florida Fish and Wildlife, you can expect my invoice in the mail later this week.